A Hunter in Teyvat, Chapter 53, Eula Story Quest Part 2, Fan Fiction, by Azazyel. With Schubert Lawrence, Eula's uncle, all but defeated and holding onto some debris so as to not fall over from Lumine's kick straight to his balls, he could only shrilly screech to us about how we were traitors to nobility and how the Lawrence clan was going to make us pay. Dude. The Lawrence clan has no say in Mondstadt. And if word of you letting the factory into Mondstadt and attacking people spreads, a mob of the people may very well burn whatever little manor you have outside the city. I spoke, as I kept my eyes on the factory assassin who used his delusion to magically cover himself in the garbs of one of the factory assassins. Paimon thinks that focusing on the factory is the smart idea, eek. Paimon cried as she flew away from the clashing corona of violent elemental abilities asserting their dominance. Sergei the factory assassin, already with his dual blades poised to attack us, when the masked man spoke, just as I expected. I knew I should have never trusted these foolish aristocrats. Then, as Schubert finally managed to stand up straight on his wobbly knee, Sergei, his factory confidant, continued to speak. We have the intel we need. Kill them all. No, I can't die here. Schubert yelled, and even as he somehow managed to duck under a thrown factory dagger and in that same diving motion roll away from a factory electro-hammer wielder, he managed to evade the factory as me and Lumine were both assailed by the elite factory delusion wielders. Don't worry about Schubert, this broken domain is a dead end on both sides. I yelled as I used both my Schnee Saber and Rain Slasher to deal with my opponents, and I was noticing a bit of a trend in me and Lumine's fights with these damned factory. For whatever reason, the factory assassins loved to focus me to the point of leaving themselves open to Lumine's geo-crystal dagger she loved to launch at people at high speeds. With this not being a limited game with characters able to use a couple of expressions of their elemental abilities, Lumine was far more powerful, as was shown in the game. I had pointed out that an Anemo tornado that despite its winds being able to rip and shear flesh from the bone will only be more powerful if a bunch of sharp geo-crystals are carried along with the tornado. But with my aura I was getting much more used to relying on it, to land deadly retaliations on the factory assassins that attempted to get easy kill shots, as hitting me in the throat or even the eye did just as much damage to my aura as stabbing my foot. So as they would attempt to draw their reverse-sided blade across my neck, I would allow them to. So, I could in turn bring my Rain Slasher Claymore down on them, splitting whoever stood against me in twain. Jake! Lumine yelled in the midst of the fight, and I saw how she was being surrounded by a trio of the fat blue-wearing hydro-delusion wielders, but I could tell even in the split second I saw her eyes that she was merely warning me as she smiled, and with a roar of Anemo-coated wind she sent a howling gale-solid wall of wind into the three large factories, sending them skidding backwards. Towards me. Damn it, Lumine, not enough time. I yelled back, exasperated, as I took a hammer blow to my shoulder as I focused for a moment to stomp and make a brutal hedge of geo-crystals, pointing at odd angles for the large factory members to be thrown into. Finally, I used a small Schnee glyph to block the electro-hammer attempting to come back down in a motion clearly aimed and braining my head open, and with his arms and hammer held up above his large form, his chest was wide open for me to ram my large claymore through the factory's chest, making with a wet crunching noise as I used my supernatural strength to twist the massive flat blade in his chest, pulping his organs. Paimon, it's clear. I yelled with the fairy popping out of the little pocket dimension. I think she hid out in during scary fights in enclosed areas. Phew, Paimon was scared one of you would fall into the lava during the fight, Paimon said jokingly as Lumine wiped off her traveler's blade that she had been using lately. Granted, she still had her dull blade, but with her traveler abilities being stripped from her, the sword was only good for being a beat stick due to its otherworldly nature and damn near indestructibility. Neither of us are so clumsy, Paimon. Lumine huffed as she walked over to me, and wordlessly, we followed Schubert's trail as he fled towards the entrance of the broken domain we were in. Thankfully, the way back was empty of factory, as we had already dealt with the majority of them, and the ones we didn't deal with. This is an outrage. Eula, you Blackheart traitor to your own blood. How dare you stand there so damn smug? Do you think the pissants and the knights and peasants will accept you, even if you turn on your very blood? Schubert Lawrence roared at Eula Lawrence, who was herself taking out the map her uncle gave to Sergei, off his split-apart corpse. I am a member of the Knights of Favonius. And as a true traitor to Mondstadt, your words have no value. You are not my uncle, and should the rest of the Lawrence clan be involved with your scheme? At that, Eula's cold face turned brittle as she looked queasy, but then her face became stony as she stared down at her uncle with her large claymore held in her hands in front of her, resting its point on the ground shook as the blue-haired beauty took a deep breath. Then the Lawrence clan doesn't need to exist, and I will personally take care of the traitors that pollute Mondstadt's idea of freedom. Eula said firmly, but I couldn't help but notice that the knights she was leading for one didn't believe her, and second looked ready to fight the vision wielder should she somehow randomly decide to allow her uncle free. All right, men, cuff Schubert and cart him off. I ordered a knight who had on a set of more ornamental armor, and he snapped to attention, seeing me and Lumine coming around the corner. Honorary knight. It's an honor to work with you again and I will follow the order immediately, he said, and as I took him in again, I noticed he was one of the knights who fought during the battle at the cathedral and distinguished himself in surviving the battle and actually killed a couple of the Fatui delusion wielders as a bog-standard knight. Good work, Knights of Favonius. Paimon crowed as though proud of some kind of achievement as she held her hands to her sides, looking over as the knights went over the Fatui that would be surviving the day. While Lumine was helping the knights, I instead went over to Eula, who had silently folded up the map of the Fatui's ill-gotten information about Mondstadt's normal and magical protection. I am willing to help you, if necessary, I spoke as I wrapped an arm around Eula's tight waistline, and instead of being standoffish as Eula would normally be, with our forms being obscured from the night view she slumped and rested her head against my chest as the stress of possibly be including in her traitorous family's scheme weighed on her. At this time, the damage the Fatui had accomplished with their little invasion of Mondstadt wouldn't be overlooked. The act of Schubert giving even more information to Fatui would have dire consequences for the disgraced Lawrence clan, and this time the discontent of the people couldn't be silenced by the real Grand Master of the Knights of Favonius, Varka, who was out on his expedition, with the whole Dvalin incident and the Fatui invasion. Jean as merely the acting Grand Master needed to be firm and make an example, so people would stay in line with all the other great knights out on expedition. Why couldn't they just keep still? Why couldn't they be content with their riches and history? Now I am ruined. Eula cried muffledly into my chest, and I took a deep breath to both calm myself and soothe her as I hummed softly while brushing my free hand that wasn't hugging Eula to me through her soft, light blue hair. Eula, you aren't ruined. Amber and all the other knights of note won't give a damn about the rumors and crap. I consoled, but my words didn't reach her, as like all teenagers and young adults. We couldn't look at social stuff from a logical point of view, which in her case was understandable as she went through a good bit of the whole Naruto Jinchuriki fanon treatment, as the people of Mondstadt hated her as a child and would refuse to even sell her food. She needed to hunt her own food in the wild to survive until Varka helped bring her into the Knights and told everyone to get over themselves and shut up. Jake. You and Lumine are leaving Mondstadt, aren't you? She asked me wetly with how clogged her throat was due to her tears, and then as she continued to speak, she looked up to me and I caved in as her amber eyes were red-rimmed and I realized this whole thing was the straw that broke the camel's back when it came to Eula's strong dissociation with Mondstadt's general people. I mean, she was literally the leader of the scout units, and what did that mean? She was practically already spending the vast majority of her time outside of Mondstadt's walls, and even now. Even with the years she has spent working herself to the bone and facing death to fight monsters for Mondstadt, she was reviled and not accepted in the hotels, couldn't even own an apartment or a house in Mondstadt, and had to bunk in the cramped temporary quarters for the nights when she wasn't bunking with a friend or out in the wilds. Please, like and subscribe to our channel.